Hello, folks. Welcome to another exciting session of Comm 103 online. Given the new developments, I will be letting you know what is happening as soon as I know more things. I hope all of you are doing well and are not losing your marbles, because clearly I'm fine. I'm not crying, you're crying. All right. So I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to or check out the previous stuff that I uploaded, and if not, that's fine. Either way, this is chapter 7. This is communicating in social and professional relationships. So much like yesterday, I will do my best. Well, not yesterday or last recording. I will try and, do some drawings to the best of my ability. I am not an artist, so they will be very sad drawings. Let me change the color though. Let's go with white. I don't know what's happening to that person. Okay. Don't mind all the background noise that I have. It's the family. All right, so let's do this. Here we go. So chapter 7 will discuss why relationships matter, some upsides of relationships, some downsides of relationships. This is where we also talk about 5 theories that take into account the nature of relationships, why we get into them, when we leave them, all that kind of fun stuff. And we'll kind of piggyback off of these guys in chapter 8. I don't know why my 8s keep looking like super sad. That's not, you know what, just move on. And we will also talk about self-disclosure, or how we share bits and pieces of who we are. Talk about friends. Yay, friendship. Always fun, always exciting. And then we'll talk about relationships at work and what those look like. So this is going to be a fun and exciting time. Like I usually do, I do recommend that you take an intermittent break. So don't try and power through this whole thing. I know I won't. I will pause it every now and again. I will stand up, get some water, drink some tea. And, maybe you pause it whenever the spirit moves you. Don't be a hero. Don't try and sit through me talking at you for the whole thing. All right, so I'm going to put a timer for 20 minutes for Mario. You don't have to follow it, but here we go. It's chapter 7. So let's talk about why social relationships matter. But really, though, why do social relationships matter? Like, why do we go through all of the effort to make friends and develop friendships and, keep in touch with family and develop a partnership with someone and get married and then get divorced? Like, why do we do all of this? Like, what is the point of it? So Baumeister and Leary suggest that this is because we have a fundamental need to belong. So this was based off of this really, really long paper, as you can see up here. It is 33 pages, and I once read it. I may or may not have cried. I didn't cry, but I did read it because, that was the kind of person that I was in college or graduate school. If you're interested in it, let me know. I can send it to you, but there's that. So the need to belong, as presented by Baumeister and Leary, is a framework based off of that paper that suggests that all human beings need to bond with other people, right? It is a fundamental human need, right? You got fundamental there. If you do not make contact with another human being, it can be really bad for your overall health, and you don't want that. And we'll talk about what that looks like and what it means in a moment. So all human beings have a fundamental desire to be part of something. That's where we get the sense of community, a sense of place. This is why our families are important, why we seek out friendships, because they make us feel connected and be part of something that is larger than ourselves, right? So when you belong to something, that generally means that you have a relationship with a person or a group of people. And by and large, those relationships are satisfying. But in order for a relationship to be satisfying, it has to meet two criteria. It has to be interactive and emotionally close. So when we think about interactive, it means that you have to have some kind of contact. You have to put in effort. You have to either see them or call them, text them, FaceTime them, video conference them. You have to put in some kind of a concerted resource and effort, time mainly, in order to keep the relationship going. So that's the interactive portion. And then this emotionally close aspect is really important because sometimes we have relationships that are interactive, but they're not emotionally close. So I like to think of people who work at a restaurant, the servers or the wait staff there, they have the regulars and they are interacting with them maybe on a daily or a weekly basis. But that doesn't mean that the relationship that they have with those regulars is emotionally close, right? So that's why you need both of them. You need to make sure that you share bits and pieces of who you are on a frequent basis. And in sharing those bits and pieces, you develop that emotional closeness with the other person or the other persons. So just because you see someone doesn't mean you actually get to know them a lot. And I'm sure you can attest to that in some of your classes. You sit with someone in the same classroom for 16 weeks at a time, but if they're on the opposite, you might interact with them, right? Because you might say hi to them, you might see them every week or every other week if you don't show up, but just because you see them doesn't mean that you know how they're like emotionally doing or what is going on in their life. So that's what we mean by emotionally close. And we'll unpack this notion of emotionally close in this chapter when we talk about self-disclosure. So there are 4 types of major relationships: virtual relationships. So these are the ones that you have never met in person. So think of relationships that happen on the interwebs, online, right? This is, that's just like a bad terminal. This is a laptop, right? So people that you have engaged with on the internet, maybe you are a gamer and you play massive online playing games. There's an acronym for that, but I can't remember that. Or maybe you like to play poker, and so you have your poker buddies online, right? Maybe you have Insta friends. I don't know if that's like an actual term. For the sake of argument, let's say that. But people that you engage with on Instagram, but have never actually like sat down and like, hey, let's go get coffee. And that leads to the next relationship, which is a Pinocchio relationship. So you met online, right? Like your buddy up here, your poker buddy, and then you decided, hey, when we're in Vegas for the World Series of Poker, let's get a drink, right? So this is a beer. And so your relationship started online here, but then you decided at the World Series of Poker that you were going to get a drink. So maybe it's not just a beer, but like a martini. That's a very sad looking cocktail glass. Let's just fix it. And let's say that is the olive, right? Not that I know what a martini looks like. So Pinocchio relationships, you start online, but then you meet in person. And some people have asked me why they're called a Pinocchio relationship. And the best thing I can assume is because if you remember that one line from Shrek, when Pinocchio says, "I'm a real boy," because he started out as something that wasn't real, like made out of wood, and then transitioned into this live human being. So I'm not saying that people that you meet online aren't real, unless you're being catfished. But even then, like that's a real person doing some damage. Okay. So then you got cyber emigrant relationships. So these are the people that you meet in person, that's in real life, IRL, or face-to-face, that's F2F, face-to-face. But now you meet on the interwebs. So think about all the people that you went to high school with, right? Or maybe you lived in a different state. So this is California. This is a very bad California. So you live here, but maybe you used to live in like, what's the hand state? I don't know what that looks like a bad heart. The mitten state, like Michigan or Minnesota. I don't know my states, right? So the people that you went to school there, you might not see them you met them in person, but now you keep up with them via Instagram, or maybe you play poker with them, or you keep up with them on the FaceTubes or the Snapgrams. So that's why it's a cyber immigrant relationship. It started out in real life and then you moved on online. Just to further this point, maybe some of us have these relationships, and maybe you get married with someone and you are unable to maintain that relationship in person because you are on one side of the world, right? And the other person is on the other side of the world. For the sake of argument, the screen is the world. And then you got real worlders. This is a really hard word to say, and I think it's because of the RL and then the RS, the real worlders. So these are people that met in person in real life, and then you continue to do so. So think about this as, maybe not in this case, but if you've ever taken a class that was in person, you met the instructor in a face-to-face setting, you met them in person, you met your classmates face-to-face, and then for 16 weeks, you will continue to meet with them in person. But then maybe if once the semester ends and you liked one of your classmates as a human being, for reasons that we will discuss in a moment, you decided like, hey, let's trade Instagrams, right? And you follow them on the grams, or maybe you follow them on the Twitters. These are or the Snapchats, right? So you met in person, but then you continue to do so. All right, that's real worlders. Here we go, moving on. We got social relationships rewards. So this is the upside of having relationships, right? There has to be an upside. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. So what are some of the upsides to being in a relationship? So this first aspect is this idea of social support. And that's exactly what it sounds like. So when you need people to look out for you for your general or emotional well-being, you have a group of people that you can reach out to. So who do you contact when you have good news or bad news or you need something? That's social support. And then happiness, I think most of us can kind of immediately identify with this. When you have good, strong relationships with other human beings, like it brings joy to your life. So that's why we have friends, right? Like, and you hang out with them because they say funny things and you like people who say funny things. And you're like, hey, funny thing. And you're like, haha, lol. I like that. So, or whatever it is that brings you joy, right? So that's the first aspect. The second aspect are material rewards. So these are general resources, things that can be shared or acquired. So things like money, although I would recommend never loaning money to your friends or family because that changes the dynamic of the relationship. And I might get to talk about that at the end of this chapter. So there's that. But material rewards, things that are shared. So what are the resources? Resources is a long word, sorry. That you might need, that can be shared. We talked about money, maybe time, right? That's a sad looking clock, but just go with it. Let's make it a stopwatch. Maybe you need someone to help you move a couch, right? That's no longer a couch. That is a mattress now. Sorry, I can't draw a couch, but maybe I can. Yeah. Hey, that's a couch. And okay, sorry, I should. That was my niece being an ass. So maybe you need help moving stuff, and you ask someone to help you, or maybe you actually like need a new mattress, and one of your friends is like, hey, like, yeah, I order a Casper or a Lisa mattress, and I don't need it, so you can have it. And you're like, nice. All right, so those are material rewards. Things that can be shared between groups of people or between individuals. Then you got health rewards. These are the good things that happened because you have strong and healthy relationships. So legit, a good heart, that looks like a very sad heart. That looks slightly better. But yeah, people who suffer from a cardiovascular incident and have more friends, right? Let me try this. Let me try all of this again. So that's a heart. And then like you have friends, right? You have friends, yay, friendship. But some research suggests that the more friends you have, the more people in your network or in your social circle, and if you have a cardiovascular incident, you are more likely to recover in a timelier fashion. So the more people that you know and the more people like you, the better your heart will hear and the faster your heart will heal. There's that. A similar principle applies when you catch a cold. The more people, the stronger your social network, the faster people recover from the common cold. In what is known as, I think it's called the Harvard study. It's not the Harvard study, but that's how my mind remembers it. They tracked men, because at the time it was mostly men, over a long period of time. And by a long period of time, I mean like JFK was one of the participants, and they tracked them over their lifespan. And what they found is that men who are married, so men who put a ring on it, so that looks like a really sad donut. Let's try again. That's a less sad. But men who put a ring on it and get married and have a strong, healthy marriage, they outlive and have better, more fulfilling lives than those who are not married. So that's not to say that like marriage is going to solve all of your like life problems, because marriage like brings its own issues. But part of what we believe is that having someone to look out for you, as is the case in marriage, that your partner looks out for you and you look out for them, that increases your odds of living, and it leads it leads to a better life, provided that it is a happy, satisfying, healthy relationship. So health rewards, all the things that you get from having friendships. There's more stuff, but I'll stop there. Okay, so if you want to, now would be a good time for you to take a break, to pause. I know I will. I'm going to stand up, stretch my legs, drink some water. And when I come back, we'll get to four downsides of having relationships. And then we will move forward. All right, so I'll be right back. Stay tuned, fellow kids. We're back. I hope you went out. Well, I was going to say went outside, but don't go outside. That's a bad idea. I hope you stood up, stretched your legs, got some tea. I know I did. So here we go. Let's talk about the downsides of social relationships. Not that any of you would know what those are like. But I'll come back. So what are some of the downsides? Time. Whenever you spend time with one of your friends, right? That means you're not spending time with another one of your friends. I don't know why their lives are exponentially longer than theirs. But, right, whenever one of your friends says like, hey, help. That was awful. Let's try again. Friends, right? One says help. And you being a good friend, you say, yeah. But when you're doing that, that means you're not doing like the other thing that's going on over here, which is a party, right? Woo, party. That's a hat. Excuse me. And like the party has cake. It's on a plate, right? It's layered cake. It's very delicious. So time that you spend with one friend means time not spent with another friend or with another activity that you care of, like eating cake and partying. This is what economics, it's not just time, but the overall idea here is what economists known as opportunity cost. Oh my gosh, why do I choose long words? So whenever it is that you choose to do one thing, that means you are forfeiting to do other things. Even when you chose to sit down and listen to this recording, that means you chose as well, whether you realize it or not, to not do other things. Like by listening to this recording, you're not watching The Mandalorian. You're not watching our savior, Baby Yoda. So thank you for choosing the important things in life. But in terms of relationships, what does that mean? That means you don't get to know why Baby Yoda is the way that he is. Assuming it's a he. We don't know that yet. Or at least at the time of this recording, we don't. All right. So time. Then we got emotional investments. So I'm going to like really double down on my Baby Yoda reference. Because let's see if I can draw a little Baby Yoda. This is gonna be a train wreck, folks, right? This is Baby Yoda. That doesn't look that bad, right? So whenever you watch a show, say in this case, The Mandalorian, that means you're not watching another show, or a movie like Ratatouille. And that means you are investing emotionally in the character that is our Lord and Savior, Baby Yoda, while not realizing the potential that Remy has. And, Remy has a lot of potential, but you might never know if you choose to watch Baby Yoda. But in our relationship, what this means is whenever we get into a relationship, that means that there's a possibility of things not working out. So whatever investment that you put into a partner, a friend, it might disappear and you might never get any of that energy, time, resources back. And that's a real thing. So there's that. Moving on. Say bye to Baby Yoda. Then you got material costs. So, excuse me. If you have a friend who invites you out to lunch, I don't know why your friends have like really weird faces, but just go for it. Not go for it, go with it. And he's like, lunch. And you're like all about it. But then there's like, let's split the check. And you're like, no. And they're really insistent. And so now you have to split the check down the middle, even though like you had one thing and they had like 4 things. And so now your one item that was like $1 sign and they're like 4 items that were $4 signs, now you have to split that. And that's awful. And no one likes that. So that's one of the material costs. Or maybe they ask to borrow your car, right? I don't know what kind of car this is, but it's definitely not a Tesla. And so they put miles on it. They wear out the tires. Look, it's moving fast. They wear out the tires. They put mileage on it. Maybe they get rear-ended and they now it has like a dent on it. And I don't know if that makes it look like it's shining. It's not shining. And so those are material costs that your well-being and maybe not your well-being, but you incur from being in a relationship. But sometimes we do these because those material costs outweigh the benefits that we get in a relationship. And we will talk about that in a moment. But before we do that, there's also physical investments. And this is like a literal physical investment, because remember that couch that you needed a few moments ago? Well, guess what? You need someone to help you move it. And it's going to be you and one of your friends, right? And hopefully you have friends that will be happy about that. I'm so sorry, that last line got me. Right, like you want to have a friend that helps you move the couch. Wow, that looks like a serious couch. I'm very proud of this drawing. And so the physical investment is like the energy that you exert to pick up the couch and move it. So that's the physical investment. So let's talk about forming and maintaining social bonds. You definitely want to take out a pen and paper or a pencil or some kind of writing utensil, because we're going to be talking about 5 theories. So this is where I need you, if you need to pause at any moment, like I do it, but this is, it gets a little dense. I'm just fair warning. So here we go. First 4 theories are about forming social bonds. So the first one is attraction theory. And this is really all about why we like who we like. And when I say like, that's very small like. I don't mean it in the romantic sense. I'm talking about like who do I think is interesting? Why am I drawn? Why do I like the people that I like? And so there's a few reasons for that, and attraction theory explores them. And it all really goes down to the things that draw you towards other human beings. So it comes in 3 different forms, and there's 4 different qualities, and we'll talk about them right about now. So think about who do I like, and why do I like them? Attraction theory explains that. Me like. So the 3 different forms. So you have physical attraction. So if you meet someone or see someone who has nice hair, rats, right? Maybe you like their hairs. Maybe you like their smile. What is their physical, what is something about their body essentially that you like? Maybe it's someone because you like their eyes. That looks like a small turd. I'm so sorry. So that's the first one. The second one is social attraction. So some people, they might look like turds, like that guy, but they're like super cool, right? And they might have duck hands too, but like they're cool. They're fun to be around. They tell good stories. They know the right thing to say at the right time. And that's why you might like them. And then the final aspect is task attraction. So these are the people that you like based on the things that they can do and your ability to rely on them. So in college, if you move to a 4-year university, the hottest commodity that a freshman can have who lives in the dorms is a car. Because if you have a car, that means that that person can take you to Target. That person can take you to the beach. I don't know, that's a cloud. It's a person with a monocle now. So task attraction is when you like someone based on what they can do. Social attraction is based on how someone is, and physical attraction, is based on what someone looks like. I hope that helps. And moving on to the 4 different types, the 4 different qualities of interpersonal attraction. So appearance is relatively close to the idea of physical attraction. Proximity. You like people because they're around you. You can't like people who are not around you. I mean, you can, but it's really, really hard to develop a healthy relationship with them. Like, I like Anna Kendrick, but my proximity to her is not great. Like, my odds of developing any type of relationship with her are very low. And that's sad. That's a big tier. All right. Similarity. We like people who are like us. We like people who share similar interests, who listen to the same band, who watch the same shows. Maybe you're friends with someone who likes Ratatouille. Or maybe you don't like people who like Pixar films, in which case, like, I don't know what's their problem. And then the final aspect is complementarity. Some of us realize that we are not great at certain things in life. And I would kind of pair this one with task attraction. So I might struggle with maths. And my friend might be good at the math. Or, more concretely, like, I might have a friend who's like really good at online drawing and I just like eat it royally. So I might like all of those people because of how they look, how close they are to me, how much alike we are, and because they can do things that I might not be able to, or they might do them better than I can. So complementarity, right? So they have something that you lack. All right, moving on. Next up is uncertainty reduction theory. This is exactly what it sounds like. People like to know things. They like to know how to interact in new or novel situations. So the first time you meet someone, right? If someone doesn't, there's not a real script to go off of. There's a social script, quote unquote, that most of us abide by. But when you meet someone, like, you don't know what that social script is because you don't know them. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that makes us nervous. We don't like that. And so to make that to make that uncertainty go away, we ask each other questions. Things like, hey, how are you? Where are you from? So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of uncertainty reduction theory, or what helps with reduce uncertainty, is letting the other person know like how you like to be treated or how they like to be treated. So on the first day of class, I said, hey everyone, my name is Mario. Everyone calls me Mario. You can call me Mario. So I was trying to reduce the amount of uncertainty on how you should address me, right? I gave you the social script. I gave you the roadmap on how to get to know me. Other people, when you first meet them, they say, hey, it's good to meet you, but hey, no touching. I don't like it. I don't like to shake hands. I don't like hugs. I will like do the hand thing, but don't touch me. And like, okay, now I know how to proceed. And by doing that, like we can navigate our relationship better and we can have more pleasant interactions. So uncertainty reduction is getting rid of those things that make us as human beings feel unpleasant in new situations. Next up is social exchange theory. So most of us have been in relationships, have relationships. And again, I want you to remember when I say the word relationship, we'll just do the relationship. That's relationship. I'm not just talking about like romantic relationships. I'm talking about all relationships, friendships, families, neighbors, acquaintances, the grocery clerk, and obviously romantic relationships. But the relationship is the all-encompassing term. And social exchange theory says that as human beings, you want to be in relationships where you get more than what you put in. Or maybe not so much that, but because that's the next one. I apologize. Social exchange theory says that you want to make sure that the effort that you're putting in is worth it. That's what social exchange theory says. And so there's a few things that you take into consideration. You have the comparison level. So if you're in a relationship, right? You might look at other relationships that are similar to yours and you're like, hey, there's a relationship over here. I like how they do something. I think that I could get that from them or from this person. And so that's where like the realistic expectation comes in. So this is kind of comparison level is kind of like an aspirational thing, right? So I think that I deserve to be treated with respect from my partners and my friends. That's comparison level. Comparison level for alternatives is when you look out at how much better or worse things can be in the relationships that you are currently are in. So if you're in this relationship and you see this person, it's like, oh, like this could be better, but maybe you see this other relationship over here, and you're like, oh, no, it could definitely be worse. So it's like, okay, like maybe I'm satisfied with the current relationship that I have. So that is comparison level for alternatives. Okay. By the way, if at any juncture you have questions, feel free to pause this and write them down on the discussion board. I will do my best to answer them. Next up is equity theory. So this is where you want to make sure that you and your partner are balanced, right? That neither you or them is getting too much, that you are getting just the right amount. You want it to be like a 1-to-1 ratio. So, but sometimes we might be in relationships that over benefit us. So you are getting more than you're putting in. And sometimes you are in relationships where it is taking so much more than what you're getting out of it. Right? So in an over benefiting relationships, you are getting a good deal. Some people might say that, the other person might not like it. And in an under benefiting relationship, it is taking you so much, it is not worth the effort, right? So that is equity theory. You want to reach a balance and somewhat of a 1-to-1 ratio where you and the other person have an equal amount, are putting in an equal amount of effort and are getting an equal share in the relationship. So that puts us at about 20 minutes. And if you want to take a break, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm going to take a break, and then we will continue with maintaining social bonds and with the not the final theory, but the last theory in the how we get and maintain relationships aspect of this chapter. So I'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, so I'm back. Welcome back. I don't know if you left, but let's continue this with maintaining social bonds and the final theory of this portion of the chapter. So how we maintain relationships. This is relational maintenance behavior theory. And if you think of your relationship as like an electrical appliance or a car, you need to do certain things to upkeep them. Like your car needs to have its tires rotated, windshield wipers changed, oil changed, spark plugs, and all that good stuff. Like that needs to be updated and changed to make sure that everything is still running. So a similar principle can be applied to our relationships as far as we have to do things, right? We have to do things to make sure that the other people in our lives are happy. Because if we don't, that is not going to go well for relationships because they will decline, right? So what are some of the things that we do to maintain our relationships? And here are the 5 main things that we do. So the first one is positivity. So these are the things that let the other person know that you like them, right? Behaviors that express goodwill. How do you express goodwill? Well, you are nice, and you don't say mean things, and you're just nice to have around. You are good company. People want to invite you to the party. When people hear your name, it's like, let's invite them to the party. They don't go like, no. Instead, it's like, hey, let's invite them to the party. They're like, ah, yes. So there's that. Positivity. Then you got openness. So this is how willing, how able, and committed in a way you are to talk about the relationship that you have with the person and talk to them about it, right? So if you two are in a relationship, both of you need to be able to say, hey, this is where I am. All right, I'm here. And this person needs to be say, yeah, I'm there too. Or conversely, this person, right? This person might say, hey, I'm here. And this person might say, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm nowhere near there. I'm like I'm like way over here. You're like, oh, okay. So you need to be willing to discuss and talk about where you are in the relationship, what the relationship is doing for you, why it's working, what is working, what is not working. And so that's why it's openness. And if you remember, excuse me, this could be a meta-communicative, because you are talking about how to talk. In this particular case, you are talking about how to make your relationship work better. Next aspect is you got assurances. When you are in a relationship, let's try that again. When you are in a relationship, you want to tell the other person nice things, right? I don't, that's like, hey, you are a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day. That's a cloud. Or, hey, I like you. Right? So that would be the verbal behavior that would express that commitment to someone else. The nonverbal behavior, you spend time with each other, right? You're excited to see them, right? You might, the nonverbal, like you would give them a hug, maybe you would give them a high five, depending on the type of relationship. So what are the things that let the other person know that you are committed to them and to the relationship? So what are the things that you say and do with your friends? If your friend invites you out, you're so like, hey, party. You're like, yeah, party. And there's pizza. You're like 100%, or maybe it's cake. It's entirely up to you what it can be. So what are things that let the other person know that you want to continue to be in that relationship? Then you got social networks. This is a fun one to talk about. So, right, you have friends. So this is you and your friends, and you have friends. That's a mole, right? You have friends, and that friend has a mole, and then this person has friends. And so at one point, you say, hey, your friends should meet my friends. And then this person's like, that's a good idea. So that's when we talk about social network convergence right here. So when you are in a relationship, and if it's a good one, you have access to all the people that they might know. This is what is known as the strength of weak ties. Ties. I apologize for my god-awful writing. And that's really important in our professional lives, because some research suggests that most of the jobs that people get, they don't get them through their friends, right? You don't get your jobs through their friends. You get them through people that you might not interact with on a regular basis. So this is your friend, but it's their friends who have different information and access to different resources that you might not have. Because if this person had that information, they would have told you about it, very likely. And so, and since you run in the same circle, It's by going out of the circle, right, and going to that portion that you are able to access new information. And that is the strength of weak ties. And so when you bring those two circles together, that's when convergence. In a romantic relationships, that's when you and your partner say like, hey, it's time that we should meet our families. And that's why that's a big deal. And then you got sharing tasks. Whenever you are in a relationship, you want to make sure that you and your partners feel like you are doing the same amount of work. So if one of you gets the groceries, maybe next time you get the groceries. Maybe if, what are some of the other tasks that you might share? Maybe if one of you cleans, right? You're cleaning, you might do the dishes. That's your hand and that's a sponge and that's a dish. Sorry, these are just awful drawings, but I'm doing the best that I can. So you want to make sure that you are pulling your weight in the relationship. And this kind of goes back to equity theory. You want to make sure that you have that 1-to-1 ratio where you are neither getting more, that you're not over benefiting, and that you're not under benefiting. Because when you feel like you are putting in more work, or the other person feels like they are putting in more work, that is when we run into problems. Just as a fun side note, this will not be on the test, as I'm sure some of you are concerned about. A lot of these things that we just talked about, these relational maintenance behaviors, they fall in line with what Gary Chapman and his best-selling book, The 5 Love Languages, call words of affirmations, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And a lot of things that we just talked about, they are all of these are a different way of approaching the idea of relational maintenance. But what this does, what this framework does, because that's what it is, it's a framework. It allows you and your partner to talk about the things that work for you. So for you, it might be quality time, but for them, it's acts of service. Sorry, let's make that more clear. And so if you are doing things, if you want to be a good communicator, you have to do things in a way that makes sense to the other person. So if you want to do a nice thing for your partner, right, you would do something that would be an act of service. So they might hate cleaning or vacuuming, right? So maybe you volunteer to do that. So that is a different way of approaching it. The 5 love languages. It is a framework, and it allows you to better have and navigate the conversation of what works for you in your relationships, as opposed to saying, I need verbal assurances. Words of affirmation sounds a lot nicer. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about revealing ourselves in a relationship. This is where we talk about the idea of self-disclosure, which is a very fancy way of saying how you reveal bits and pieces of who you are to different people. And it has to be intentional, sharing information that you know about you that others don't have. Because if I share something about me, like, hey, my name is Mario, it's like, you already know that. But if I tell you, hey, my middle name is Edgar, some of you might know that, but most of you don't have that piece of information, right? And me saying, hey, my middle name is Edgar, I'm going out of my way to share information that is real about me that I don't think you have, as opposed to saying, hey, my middle name is Remy, or my middle name is Linguini, because that would not be true. And all of this is a part of what is known as social penetration theory. And if you remember Shrek, when he talked about ogres are like onions because people have layers, that is pretty much what one of the metaphors used to describe social penetration theory. Because people are like onions. At the top, there's like the most basic stuff. Deeper down the core, there's like more revealing stuff. And at the center are our deepest, darkest secrets. And we get to share this information through breadth and depth. And that is how we learn about other people and how they get to know us. So let's talk about this a little bit more. So there's two levels of self-disclosure. Breadth is the things that you are willing to share about you. So there's school, there's work, there's your activities, there's your hobbies, maybe something else that you might enjoy. Maybe you like cooking, right? Or maybe this is like your family relationships. And so these are all different aspects of who you are. And you could pick and choose which bits and pieces of your which bits and pieces of your life you get to share with other people. So if you meet someone, depending on the setting, say like you meet them at a coffee shop near campus, you might share them a little bit about your school, right? Like, hey, since there was a virus outbreak, school got canceled, and now we're doing online classes. So that's what I'm watching, right? And it's like, there's many things that you could share, but you choose to share that. Okay, I'll come back to this in a moment. And then there's depth. So how much of those things that we just talked about do you want to share? So if there's school, work, and family, hobbies and activities, right? So the surface level stuff, like right here, is classes, right? Classes. What classes are you taking? Or what instructor are you taking? Deeper down here would be class, like what room number. Even deeper down is like your grades. And maybe there's something even deeper down, right? So the degree of intimacy of your self-disclosure. So if someone asks you, how is school going? You're probably going to say, it's going well. And depending on how close you are with someone, you might tell them like, hey, I don't feel safe. I'm taking this class in this room with this teacher. But not everyone will have access to what your grades are. So I hope that makes sense. Breadth is the range of topics. Depth is how much about those topics you're willing to share. So that's how I illustrate this. Range and I can't think of another word than depth. So there's that. And there's 5 characteristics of self-disclosure. Again, it has to be intentional and truthful. Like your purpose has to be to share that information, and that information has to be true. It varies in breadth and depth. So let's say this is your therapist. Let's give her long hair. And this is your tax accountant. Let's make him a little grumpy. Right? So varies in breadth. Your therapist will know a lot about your personal life. She, he, they, in this case, she, will have a wide breadth and a large depth about their personal happenings. Meanwhile, your tax accountant, or your tax person will have will not have breadth about like your romantic life, but they'll certainly have depth on your money situation. And that's probably how you want it, because if your tax person knows more about your romantic life than they do about your money, then maybe that's why they're grumpy. It varies among relationships. Again, if you have your therapist and your angry tax accountant, those people are not the same to you because the relationship is not the same. The relationship that you have with your therapist is very different than the relationship that you have with your tax person. Usually reciprocal. Most of our friends, we share things back and forth. If I tell you about my day, you tell me about your day. And that is how we usually build the relationship. And then finally, it's influenced by gender norms. We'll talk about this in a second. But, you know, some men have a harder time sharing their feelings with other men. Feels like we don't talk about that as much, right? But if I were to talk about my feelings with a female, I'd be more willing to do that by virtue of gender norms, because men are not supposed to talk about their emotions, which is just a load of crap. So there's that aspect. And in a moment, we will explore a little bit more nuanced aspect of why or how gender norms influence our relationships. Yeah, okay. So 5 characteristics of self-disclosure. I have to make it my point to share that, and it has to be real. Excuse me. Depending on who I'm with, I will share certain aspects of my life. And most people usually share things in a reciprocal way, like I say hello, you say hello. And depending on who I'm talking to, I will adapt to the conversation. So if I'm talking to a female, I will probably not be swearing at them, as opposed to if I were talking to like one of my male friends, it's like, yeah, you're a fucking dumbass. Crap. All right, moving on. So there's a couple of upsides to sharing bits and pieces of who you are. So obviously, the more you share who you are, it deepens the relationship. Wow, it's really aggressive. Right? Because that means that you trust the other person. And if you trust someone, it means that you like it. And if you like them, that means you will likely continue to like them. And if you like them, you'll want to keep them around. If you keep them around, like, it's just this really interesting loop where it's an interesting feedback loop. Reciprocity, I share something with you, you share something with me. Emotional release. Sometimes you just have a bad day. Hold on, let's try that again. And sometimes just sharing that with your friend makes you feel good. Assistance to others. When you let your friend know that you were having a bad day, they are more able to say, hey, I got you. Imagine that's them putting their arm around you. Or, you know, they're like, oh, I'm sorry. let me give you a hug. And you're like, okay. So upsides of self-disclosure, you have better relationships because you share things with one another. It can make you feel better, and it can let other people know that you need help, or that they can help you, or that you can help them. So all of those are good things. Now, obviously, there's also some downsides of relationship, of sharing things with someone. You might be in a bad mood and like yelling at someone and telling them like why you had a rough day, and they'd be like running away from you. This makes it look like you're yelling at them, which is why they're running. Sorry. You could be rejected when you share something like, hey, I haven't eaten all day, as someone is eating lunch. And the other person's like, yeah, sucks to suck, man. Obligations to others. Sometimes when we share things, it triggers our obligations to them. So I promise you that if you do this for me, if you help me out with this, like I will help you out whenever you need it, because I really need this moment. And then like they cash in on that. So that's one aspect of it. Hurt to others. Sometimes when we share bits and pieces of who we are, they can use that information to damage us. If I tell you a secret, right? And you go tell it to someone else, and they tell it to someone else, and then they tell it to someone else. Now, this one thing I told you has spread far beyond what I intended. Or in a completely different way, sometimes when we share something with another person, they come back at a later time, and then they just throw it back at you. So that's called gunny sacking. So if you can imagine like having like a little pouch, right? And it's like filled with like little gunnies or rocks. And then when the time comes, this is you. You go into the pouch, and then like you fling it at someone. Violation of other people's privacy. In the example that I just mentioned, when I share something with you, and then like it goes down like the rumor mill. Okay, I think now would be a good time for you to take a break. I know I certainly need one. We're almost done. Hang in there. I'll be back. Okay, so here we go. Characteristics of friendship. Number one, they're voluntary. I hope that all the people that you are friends with like opted in, you know, like I hope that you don't hold your friends hostage, right? Like they're not like chained to each other or something in any way. Shackled, that's very aggressive. So we decide who we want to be friends with. I chose my friends, and my friends choose me. So that's why it's voluntary, which is really important. Usually develop between peers. So peers is someone either in your general age range or in a similar position of power as you, right? And you usually become friends with people at this developmental stage in your academic career. Most of you are college aged. And so a vast majority of your friendships come from people in school. And that's why most of you are peers. That's where most of your peers are, excuse me. Now, if you're at work where the age range runs the gamut, right? You have someone who wears glasses and like has a little bit of hair. Now that might vary, but it is possible that you have a colleague that is like 10 to 20 years older than you, and it is possible that you become friends with them. Now, that doesn't mean that you will have a similar outlook on life, but it's still possible that you can get along and that they're your peer. So friendships are governed by rules, right? Most of us kind of know what the rules of friendships are. They say nice things, you say nice things, they say nice things to you, you say nice things to them. And most of these are cultural, and it's, yeah, I'm trying to think what else to say about this. A lot of the rules that come up in relationships are unwritten and unspoken. Most people just kind of know them. And it's only when people violate them that they become apparent. One of my favorite examples is from Mean Girls, when Karen asks, right? I think it's Gretchen, or one of the girls asks Lindsay Lohan, it's like, hey, if you're from South Africa, how come you're white? And one of them looks and is like, Gretchen, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white. So that's one of those unspoken and unwritten rules. Like, you don't ask your friends, probably, like why they're white if they're from Africa. And it's only when you violate that rule that it becomes apparent. This is challenging for people who are on the autism spectrum. I don't know if that's what it's called anymore, but people who are on the spectrum, because most of us learn how to read nonverbal cues, and people who are on the spectrum do not have that ability to understand the nonverbal social cues. And so they often violate them, which is why some of them have a hard time making friends. Okay, this comes up again. Friends and friendships differ by sex. So the expectations of what we want from each other is different. So, right, like a male friendship, they might just like sit down and like watch the game. A female, oh Jesus, that was awful. A female relationship, they might hang out and like drink coffee and talk, while these guys just like, they sit and they just watch TV and no words are said. Now maybe one of these guys becomes friends with the female, right? And they get coffee together as well. But the reasons why all of these folks are friends are for kind of different reasons. These guys might just be in it because it's a shared interest. They might be friends because of shared life experience, and they might be friends because of social support reasons, or like they've been friends since childhood. So what people expect from their relationships depends on their sex. But by and large, men and women just want to be respected and liked by their friends and family. And so the other aspect of this is homosexual relationships, so men to men. They're pretty happy, as are women to women relationships. So, all right, this is a fun one. Why we avoid romance with friends of the opposite sex. So here are 5 to 7 reasons why someone told you they don't want to go out with you. Maybe no one's actually told you this one. I just don't think you're attractive. Right? One of the reasons why you might get shut down. Your relatives, my mom and dad or my friends would not approve of you. Juliet, right? Montague and Capulet. Classic. I'm not ready for a romantic relationship, right? I am not ready. Hash brown eye roll. Another good one. You know what? I'm afraid that if we go out, our friendship will be ruined. Let me tell you how I feel about that. That was very aggressive coloring there. So that's another reason why someone might shut you down, or why you might shut someone down. You know, I'm afraid of being hurt or let down in this relationship. This is such an interesting one to me. So it's you and the other person, and you're like, hey, we should be a thing. And the other person's like, we should, but also I know that they like you. And I know we like each other, but I'm afraid for their feet. Like, I'm worried about their well-being because they'll cry or throw up, whatever. So I'm worried about what they think or how it might affect them. So those are the 6 reasons why someone might shut you down to tell you to go away. Not that any of you have ever heard these or used them before. This is just obviously hypothetical, right? It's not hypothetical. These are, I think they found these by doing some research amongst college students a couple of years ago. All right, moving on. Social relationships in the workplace. We're almost done, folks. You can see, I can feel the light. Well, not feel it, but I neither see it because, you know, but we're almost done. That's the point. Coworkers, much the peer-to-peer level. These are people who have the same amount of power as you do. And you engage with them, and like you see things. If you work retail, you deal with angry, berating customers all day in and day out. And you and your fellow colleagues commiserate over the incompetence of such people. And that's probably because you're in a similar position of power. So that's your coworkers. Then you got superiors and subordinates. So this is your boss and you, or the other way around, you and your boss. Or maybe you're the boss. Yeah, you the boss. And so what this means is that you have power over people. Right? It's like underlings, go clean. That's just bad. So you are able to tell people what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. That's usually where the power dynamic comes in. And then finally, clients and professionals. If you think of a graphic artist, a designer, a tailor, a coach, they are professionals and they have clients, right? They are really good at what they do. So if you have a tailor, right, they might make you a nice shirt, right? Or they, I'm trying to think of what other professions. might be professionals and clients so that I could draw. But in these instances, you both kind of have a similar power structure, a power balance. And that's interesting because you count on them, right? But they also count on you. Now there's this, this is not in the textbook, but there's this interesting dynamic that happens between clients and professionals that in some instances bleeds into like the general workforce. Oh, rats. All right, give me a moment. Right, so there are what are called, let me try that again. You got social norms. And you got market norms. Social norms are the things that govern your friendships, your personal relationships. And then market norms are the rules that govern I mean, I hate to use this, but for the sake, I can't think of a different word right now. Market or business relationships, right? So let's put that down there. So what happens is that if you interact with someone for a prolonged period of time, what might happen is that these norms might bleed. Because if you are a client of someone for over 20 years, over time, you might share bits and pieces of your personal life, right? They might ask you, hey, how are the kids doing? How's your spouse, right? But you are also bound by the business relationship. And what happens occasionally in these clients and professional relationships is that these lines blur. And sometimes people expect that just because we've been friends for 20 years, right? That you might do some of the work for free because, hey, like we've known each other. But that's not how you would treat a professional. You wouldn't ask a professional to work for free. And so sometimes we take advantage of those social norms. So I will post a link onto that. This was from Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational. All right, so I'm going to clear that. So there's that, and that's a wrap for this chapter. So we talked about why social relationships matter. There's 4 different types of relationships. Talked about 3 upsides of relationships, 4 downsides, how we form and maintain social bonds. That's where we discussed the 5 theories. We talked about how we reveal ourselves in relationships, which is where we talked about self-disclosure. The 5 aspects that make up self-disclosure, 4 upsides, 4 downsides of self-disclosure. And then we talked about 4 things that make friendships. And then we talked about 6 reasons why we don't want to be friends, or excuse me, why we don't want to engage in a romantic relationship with one of our friends of the opposite sex. And then we talked about 3 relationships in the workplace to wrap things up. All right, everyone. I hope this was helpful. I will be posting it shortly. I hope that, please share or post any questions on the discussion board that you might have. I will do my best to answer them in a timely fashion. If something was not clear, I will do my best to respond to it. If something is working, whatever is working in this online format. Let me know if something is not working for you. Let me know. Remember, this is for you and for your benefit. And I'm here to make this as painless and as interesting or as engaging as I humanly can. So let me know what's working, and I will catch you next time. All right. Bye-bye.